The prophecies of many Russian saints and elders speak about the end of the red yoke coming after some conflict with China. They also speak about a future and final Russian Tsar that will liberate Russia from the red yoke and cleanse the church of heresy-preaching hierarchs. These prophecies state that almost every hierarch will be removed on account of preaching heresy. It is important to remember that Sovietism, Bolshevism, these are first and foremost a spiritual reality. Therefore, the red yoke is a spiritual reality and only secondarily a political reality. The red yoke continues in Russia and has continued since 1917 until this very day. Beyond all of this, Father Seraphim Rose identified the chief heresy of communism being Chileism, the seeking to establish a kingdom of this world. To him, that was the chief heresy of communism, and this heresy continues to be promoted by the Russian political forces and by the hierarchs of the Moscow Patriarchate to this very day. There's been multiple accounts in the past year even of Patriarch Kirill calling for a new multipolar world order for the sake of social justice and world peace. This is exactly what Father Seraphim was talking about. It's a form of anti-Christianity. It's using the church as a tool to establish a global order, a kingdom of this world. And Father Seraphim Rose rightly says this will be the kingdom of Antichrist. Going back to our current political Russian situation, it can be stated that when President Putin came to power in Russia, being the former head of the KGB FSB, and having famously said there's no such thing as a former KGB agent, when he came to power in Russia, the Lubyanka, the KGB FSB, seized control over the Russian land. When communism fell in the early 1990s, the Communist Party no longer had power or control. They continued to exist, but they didn't have the power and control they once had over the entire country. But the Soviet secret police never ceased to exist. They continued to function. And in 1999 and afterwards, through President Putin, it can be said that they gained control over the Russian land. This is the red yoke, both as a spiritual reality and as a political reality. And we await the final Russian Tsar, because what's being erected now is the kingdom of Antichrist. It's absolutely vital to remember that the Antichrist will appear as a protector and defender of the Orthodox faith. He'll appear pious and humble and full of virtues. He'll fight corruption and immorality. He'll establish a global order of peace and justice. He'll give everything that the conservative traditionalists of the Sergianist variety of the Moscow Patriarchate are now seeking. According to Elder Athanasius Mytileneos, certain forerunners of the Antichrist will fight the West and seek to end their reign of immorality and corruption. These forerunners are here now in the service of the Antichrist, seeking to establish his kingdom. Admittingly, they probably don't realize this, having been deceived, but this is a sad reality we're now facing, and most Orthodox are cheering for them. Simply because they hate the West, they turn a blind eye to what the devil is doing on the other side when he appears as an angel of light to deceive the world. May God help us. As a final note, some people will certainly say, well, if this is true, why am I not hearing about this from our living elders who are disciples of saints? Why am I not hearing about this from my favorite YouTube personalities? And I'd ask concerning the saints and elders, because these are details of the apostasy. This is not a manifestation of the final historical Antichrist. It's details leading up to his revealing. I'd ask, how many times in the past 100 years have saints and elders outside of the Russian church spoken about Russian ecclesiastical matters in detail? Do we have, say, Greek or Romanian elders speaking about and against the living church? Not that I'm aware of, or about how the living church was recognized as the canonical church of Russia by multiple patriarchates. I don't believe we've heard any Athenites speak about that. Do we have saints and elders of the last 100 years speaking out in defense of the new martyrs and confessors in detail? I don't believe so. Do we have saints and elders exposing lies leading up to the capitulation of a part of the church abroad to the Moscow Patriarchate in 2007? No, to be honest, most of these saints and elders are so busy with confessions and ecclesiastical matters in their own church that they don't pay attention to these details that are related in languages they don't understand. As for YouTube personalities, just be careful who you're following. I mean, some popular YouTube personalities are saying that Sergianism has been condemned in Russia. even as Patriarch Kirill is erecting statues to Sergius. Some people are saying ecumenism is condemned in Russia, even as ecumenism is clearly manifested as being existent and thriving from the official web pages of the Moscow Patriarchate. In other words, we're being fed lies by some people, and some people, sad to say, are so busy with other matters that they don't have time to look into these matters. They're so busy teaching and researching other issues that they consider more pressing or that they're more aware of, that they just don't have the time to look into these matters. And I've spoken to some of these people, and some of them admit they are not familiar with these matters. They wish they had time to look into these matters, but they don't. Anyway, that's a small explanation, because I'm sure some people would say, why am I not hearing about this from others? And we have to be reminded that our Christ said, why don't you even judge of yourselves what is right? And that we have anointing from the Holy One, and we have no need for anyone to teach us, from the Epistle of St. John. This doesn't mean we should guide ourselves, but we should be aware of our own accord of what's going on. And if something is dangerous, we should bring it to these elders and these people and ask them to look into it, if they're people we actually trust. If we realize they've been tainted by lies and hypocrisy, and, for example, will one day admit that the Moscow Patriarchate preached heresy at the conciliar level, but then conveniently forget it when it doesn't fit them, pushing their own agenda or stuff like this, then maybe we shouldn't ask those people. Anyway, may God help us. Thank you, everyone.